Once upon a time, in the bustling streets of Lagos, there lived an 18-year-old girl named Mercy who lost everything in a single day. Thrown out by her wicked stepmother with nothing but the clothes on her back and a school certificate, she was forced to survive on the harsh streets, sleeping on church benches and taking whatever work she could find. She had no idea that her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. But before any of that happened, Mercy's story began on the worst day of her life. The rain had started just as they lowered her father's casket into the red earth. Mercy stood at the graveside, her black dress clinging to her thin frame, watching the only family she had ever known disappear beneath the soil. Her father, Mr. Joseph, had been a simple man, a civil servant who worked himself to exhaustion trying to provide for his family. Now he was gone, and Mercy was left with nothing but memories and the stepmother who had always looked at her with cold, calculating eyes. Mrs. Patricia didn't waste time with pretense. The very next morning, while Mercy was still red-eyed from crying, her stepmother stormed into the small room Mercy shared with her step-siblings in their cramped flat in Mushin. "Where is it?" Patricia demanded, her voice sharp as broken glass. Mercy looked up from the mat where she had spent a sleepless night. "Where is what, Ma? Don't play stupid with me. My gold necklace is missing. The one your father gave me." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "You're the only one who would dare steal from me." "I didn't take anything, Ma. I swear." The slap came so fast Mercy didn't see it coming. Her cheek burned as Patricia loomed over her. "Thief. Your father spoiled you, filling your head with dreams of university. Now he's gone and I won't have a common thief under my roof." Mercy's step-siblings, Jennifer and Michael, watched from the doorway with blank expressions. They had never been cruel, but they had never been kind either. They simply existed in the same space, bound by their mother's influence. "Pack your things and get out," Patricia said coldly. "I want you gone before noon." "But Ma, where will I go? I have nowhere." "That is not my problem. Your father left nothing but debts. I cannot feed another mouth, especially not a thief's mouth." Patricia turned and walked away, her wrapper swishing behind her. Mercy's hands trembled as she gathered her belongings. A few clothes, some worn textbooks, and her WAEC certificate, the secondary school result she had worked so hard to earn. Her father had been so proud when she passed with good grades. "This is your future, Mercy," he had told her, touching the certificate with reverent fingers. "Hold on to this. Education is the only inheritance I can give you." By 11 o'clock, Mercy stood outside the compound gate with a small bag slung over her shoulder. The Lagos sun beat down mercilessly as she walked through the dusty streets of Mushin, past the mechanics and the market women, past the yellow buses belching black smoke. She had no plan, no money, nowhere to go. That evening, she found herself at a small church she used to attend with her father. Pastor Williams was surprised to see her, even more surprised when she broke down and told him everything. He was kind but helpless. "I wish I could help more, my daughter," he said, his weathered face full of sympathy. "But my own family is struggling. You can sleep here in the church for now, until you find something better." That night, Mercy lay on a wooden bench, her bag as a pillow, staring at the cross hanging above the altar. The church was silent except for the sound of generators humming in the distance and the occasional bark of dogs in the street. She pulled out her WAEC certificate and held it close. "Papa," she whispered into the darkness, "I don't know what to do." But the only answer was silence, and the hardwood beneath her back, and the uncertainty of tomorrow pressing down like the Lagos heat. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, not knowing that this moment of absolute despair was just the first page of a story that would take her places she could never have imagined. The first time Mercy carried a basin of pure water sachets on her head through Lagos traffic, her neck ached so badly she thought it might break. But the 40 naira she made that day meant she could eat, so the next morning, she did it again. 3 weeks had passed since Patricia threw her out. The church bench had become her bedroom, though Pastor Williams looked increasingly uncomfortable about the arrangement. Mercy knew she couldn't stay there forever. During the day, she wandered the streets looking for any work she could find. She hawked pure water at Oshodi, washed clothes for a woman in Yaba who paid her 200 naira for a full day's work, and once spent an entire afternoon peeling a mountain of onions that left her eyes burning and swollen. The other street girls she encountered were a mix of kindness and hardness. They showed her where to sleep when the church was locked for a midweek service, an uncompleted building in Acacia where homeless people gathered at night. The building had no roof, just concrete floors and walls that stopped halfway to the sky. When it rained, everyone huddled under makeshift tarpaulins and cardboard. Some of the girls sold more than water or oranges, and Mercy learned not to ask questions. "You too proper," a girl named Blessing told her one night. Blessing was 19 but looked 30, her eyes hard with experiences Mercy didn't want to understand. "The way you talk, the way you carry yourself. This life will beat it out of you." But Mercy refused to let it. Every night before she slept, she touched her WAEC certificate, still crisp in its plastic sleeve. She had hidden it in the lining of her bag where no one would find it. It was more than paper. It was proof that she had been someone, that she could be someone again. Her luck changed slightly when she met Mrs. Ngozi, a woman who needed a housemaid. The job came through a woman at the church who knew someone who knew someone. Mrs. Ngozi lived in a 3-bedroom flat in Acacia with her husband and 2 children. She was demanding and stingy, but she paid 5,000 naira a month, which was more than Mercy had ever seen. The work was backbreaking. Mercy woke at 5 in the morning to fetch water, cook breakfast, clean the entire flat, wash clothes by hand, and care for Mrs. Ngozi's children. The woman watched her like a hawk, timing how long she took in the bathroom, counting the pieces of meat in the soup to make sure Mercy wasn't stealing. At night, Mercy slept on a thin mat in the kitchen, exhausted to her bones. But she saved every kobo she could. She ate the leftovers from the family's meals, drank gari when there were no leftovers, and never spent money on anything that wasn't absolutely necessary. The money accumulated slowly in a small purse she kept tied around her waist even when she slept. "You're foolish," Mrs. Ngozi told her once, when she found Mercy reading one of the children's school books during a rare break. "What is a housemaid doing with books? You should focus on your work." Mercy bit her tongue and kept quiet. She had learned that some battles weren't worth fighting. But at night, lying on her thin mat while cockroaches crawled across the kitchen floor, she made plans. She calculated how many months it would take to save enough for a room in a Face Me I Face You compound. How much she would need to start a small business, maybe selling provisions. How long before she could think about university, though that dream seemed impossibly distant. Sometimes despair threatened to swallow her whole. She would wake in the middle of the night, her body aching, and wonder if this was all her life would ever be. If Patricia had been right and she was nothing without her father's protection. If God had forgotten her name. But then she would remember her father's words. "Education is the only inheritance I can give you." And she would touch her certificate in the darkness and promise herself that she wouldn't give up. Not yet. Not ever. The city of Lagos ground people down, swallowed them whole, and spat out what was left. But Mercy was determined to be different. She didn't know how, didn't know when, but somewhere deep inside, a small flame of hope still burned. And as long as it burned, she would keep moving forward, one painful step at a time. The evening traffic on Lekki Ape Expressway moved like sluggish blood through diseased veins. Mercy wove between cars with her basin of oranges balanced on her head, calling out prices to drivers who mostly ignored her. Her feet ached in her worn slippers, and sweat ran down her back despite the fading sunlight. After 2 months with Mrs. Ngozi, Mercy had saved enough to quit. The woman's constant suspicion and verbal abuse had become unbearable. Now Mercy hopped full-time, moving from Oshodi to Acacia to Lekki, following the traffic, following the money. She slept in the uncompleted building with Blessing and the other girls, splitting the cost of a shared tarpaulin to keep the rain out. "Auntie, fresh oranges. Cold and sweet," she called out, tapping on a car window. The woman inside waved her away without looking up from her phone. Mercy moved to the next car, then the next. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. In another hour, she would pack up and head back to Acacia. She had made 300 naira so far, not as much as she hoped, but enough for food and to save a little. That's when she heard it. The screech of tires, the sickening crunch of metal on metal, and then screaming. Mercy whipped around to see a black SUV spinning across 3 lanes of traffic. It clipped a Danfo bus, sending the bus careening into other vehicles. The SUV flipped once, twice, and landed on its side with a thunderous crash. For a moment, everything stopped. Then chaos erupted. People jumped out of their cars, running toward the accident or away from it. Mercy's basin of oranges tumbled from her head, fruit rolling across the hot asphalt as she ran toward the overturned SUV. "Are you mad? Come back!" Blessing shouted behind her, but Mercy didn't listen. The SUV was smoking, its front end completely crushed. Through the spider-webbed windshield, Mercy could see a man slumped over the steering wheel, blood running down his face. The smell of petrol filled the air, sharp and terrifying. "Someone help!" Mercy screamed, grabbing at the door handle. It wouldn't budge. Other people gathered around, phones out, filming or calling for help, but no one moved to assist. "The car will blow," someone shouted. "Leave him, he's already dead." But the man's fingers twitched. Mercy saw it, saw the slight movement of his hand against the steering wheel. He was alive. She pulled harder at the door, her muscles screaming. A man in a blue shirt finally stepped forward to help her, and together they wrenched the door open. The man inside was middle-aged, well-dressed in a now-ruined suit. His breathing was shallow and his eyes were closed, but he was breathing. Mercy and the Good Samaritan in the blue shirt grabbed him under the arms and dragged him away from the vehicle. They had barely gotten 10 meters away when flames erupted from the SUV's engine with a whoosh that singed the air. People screamed and scattered. Mercy fell backward, her heart hammering in her chest. The man in blue shirt was shouting for an ambulance. Someone else had water and was pouring it over the unconscious man's face. In the distance, sirens wailed, growing closer. Mercy looked down at her hands, now covered in someone else's blood. The reality of what she had just done hit her all at once. Her legs trembled. Police would come. They would ask questions. People like her, people with no address, no connections, no money, those people ended up in cells for days, weeks, sometimes just disappeared. "The ambulance is coming," someone shouted. Mercy glanced at the injured man. His eyes were fluttering open, unfocused. He would live. That was enough. She stood on shaky legs and backed away from the crowd. No one was watching her. They were all focused on the drama, on their phones, on the burning vehicle. She turned and walked quickly away, then broke into a run. Behind her, she heard the ambulance arriving, heard the crowd's excited chatter. But Mercy didn't stop. She ran until her lungs burned, until she was several streets away, until she was sure no one had followed her. Only then did she slow down, pressing her hand against a wall to catch her breath. Her basin of oranges was gone, her entire day's investment lost. But the man was alive. She had saved someone's life. The thought filled her with a strange mixture of pride and fear. As she walked back toward Acacia in the growing darkness, she didn't know his name, his wealth, or his power. She only knew that when she saw someone in need, she hadn't been able to walk away. And that simple act of humanity, done without thought of reward or recognition, had set in motion events that would reshape her entire world. But that night, as she lay on the concrete floor of the uncompleted building, all Mercy knew was that she had lost a day's earnings and her basin, and tomorrow she would have to start again from nothing. The Lagos night pressed down on her, heavy with uncertainty, as she closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Few days later, Sister Rebecca from the church told her about a cleaning job at a big company on Victoria Island. Mercy could hardly believe her luck. "They need someone for the night shift," Sister Rebecca explained, handing Mercy a piece of paper with an address. "The pay is 25,000 naira a month. Go there tomorrow and ask for Mr. Johnson. Tell him I sent you." 25,000 naira. Mercy had to sit down when she heard the amount. That was more money than she had ever dreamed of earning. With that kind of money, she could rent a real room, eat proper meals, maybe even start saving seriously for the future. The interview was brief. Mr. Johnson, the facilities manager, was a tired-looking man who barely glanced at her before explaining the job. You'll clean the executive floors. 10 at night until 6 in the morning. We provide the cleaning supplies. You show up on time, do your work, don't steal anything, and we won't have problems. Understood. Yes, sir, Mercy said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Good. You start Monday. The office building on Victoria Island was like nothing Mercy had ever seen. 20 stories of gleaming glass and steel, with a lobby that had marble floors and air conditioning so cold she shivered. The security guards checked her ID, gave her a badge, and directed her to the service elevator. The night shift team consisted of 5 people, 3 men who handled the lower floors and heavy work, and 2 women, including Mercy, who cleaned the executive offices. The other woman, Patience, was older and had been working there for 3 years. Don't touch anything on the desks, Patience warned her on the first night. Don't move papers, don't open drawers, don't even think about taking a pen. They have cameras everywhere, and these rich people notice everything. Mercy nodded, absorbing the rules. Clean but don't disturb. Be invisible. Leave no trace except cleanliness. The work itself wasn't difficult, just thorough. She vacuumed carpets, mopped floors, cleaned bathrooms, emptied bins, and wiped down every surface until it gleamed. The offices amazed her. Some had views of the Lagos Lagoon, the water glittering with reflected lights. The furniture was expensive, the computers sleek and modern. One office had a bookshelf full of leather-bound books that Mercy longed to touch. But what struck her most was the waste. Half-eaten lunches left in bins, expensive pens scattered carelessly, printouts of documents that were barely read before being thrown away. In one office, she found a plate with a full chicken and rice dinner, barely touched, abandoned on a desk. Her stomach growled. She stared at it for a long moment before emptying it into the trash. Taking food would be stealing, and she needed this job too badly to risk it. Weeks passed. Mercy fell into a rhythm. Sleep during the day in a small room she now rented in Yoba, work at night, save her money. The building became familiar, the routine comforting. She learned which offices had the best views, which bathrooms were the hardest to clean, which executives left their lights on all night. Sometimes she would pause in her work and imagine what it would be like to sit at one of these desks, to have people bring you coffee, to make decisions that mattered. The distance between her world and theirs seemed impossibly vast, like the gulf between earth and sky. One night, while cleaning a corner office on the 15th floor, she found a book left open on a chair. Things Fall Apart, by Chinua Achebe. She had read it in secondary school and loved it. Without thinking, she picked it up, reading a few lines, losing herself in the familiar words. Do you like Achebe? Mercy nearly dropped the book. She spun around to find a man standing in the doorway. He was middle-aged, well-dressed in casual clothes, and he was smiling at her with genuine curiosity, not the suspicion she expected. I'm sorry, sir, she stammered, putting the book down quickly. I wasn't stealing, I can see that, he said, walking into the office. I asked if you liked Achebe. Mercy hesitated. Something about his tone made her answer honestly. Yes, sir. We studied him in school. His writing makes you think. The man's smile widened. What did you think about Okonkwo's tragic flaw? And just like that, Mercy found herself in a conversation about literature with a man whose office she was supposed to be cleaning. They talked for maybe 5 minutes before he glanced at his watch and said he needed to get back to work. I'm sorry for keeping you from your job, he said. It's okay, sir. Mercy picked up her mop, her mind still reeling from the strangeness of the encounter. As he turned to leave, he paused. What's your name? Mercy, sir. Well, Mercy, it's nice to meet someone who appreciates good literature. Have a good night. He walked out, leaving her standing there with her mop, wondering who he was. She didn't recognize him, but his office was large and well-appointed, which meant he was important. She finished cleaning quickly and moved on to the next floor. Later, when she was packing up her supplies at the end of her shift, Patience found her in the storage room. "I heard you were talking to someone upstairs," Patience said, her voice worried. "Who was it?" "I don't know. A man in a corner office on 15. He asked me about a book." Patience's eyes widened. "What did he look like?" Mercy described him. "Jesus, Mercy. That's one of the executives. You have to be careful. Don't let them engage you in conversation. Just clean and leave." But as Mercy left the building that morning, stepping out into the early dawn light of Victoria Island, she couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. For 5 minutes, someone had seen her as a person, not just a cleaner. Someone had been interested in what she thought. It was a small thing, maybe meaningless, but it warmed something inside her that had been cold for a very long time. 3 nights later, Mercy was assigned to clean the executive floor she usually avoided. The supervisor who normally handled it was sick, so Patience asked her to cover. "Just the 20th floor tonight," Patience said. "Do a good job. Those are the big bosses up there." The 20th floor was different from the others. The carpets were thicker, the artwork on the walls looked expensive, and every office had floor-to-ceiling windows with stunning views of Lagos at night. Mercy pushed her cleaning cart slowly, careful not to bump into anything. She was mopping the hallway when she noticed light spilling from one of the offices. It was past midnight. Most of the building was empty, but someone was working late. She debated skipping that office and coming back later, but the supervisor had been clear: every office must be cleaned tonight. Mercy knocked softly on the door frame. "Come in," a voice called. She pushed her cart into the office and froze. It was him. The man who had asked her about Achebe, sitting behind a massive desk covered in papers, a laptop open in front of him. He looked up and his face broke into a smile of recognition. "Mercy, the literature enthusiast." "Good evening, sir," she said, suddenly self-conscious. "I can come back later if you're busy." No, come in. I need a break anyway." He leaned back in his chair and stretched. "My eyes are starting to cross from reading these reports." Mercy began emptying the waste bin, working quickly and quietly. But he seemed in the mood to talk. "Do you work every night?" he asked. "Yes, sir. 10 to 6. That's a long shift. Do you sleep during the day?" "Yes, sir." He was quiet for a moment, watching her work. It made her nervous, but not in a threatening way. His attention felt curious, not predatory. "How old are you, Mercy?" 18, sir." 18. He said it thoughtfully. "And you're working night shifts instead of being in university. Do you mind if I ask why?" Mercy's hands tightened on her mop. This was getting too personal, straying into territory that could only bring pain. But something in his voice, a genuine kindness she hadn't heard in so long, made her answer truthfully. "I finished secondary school, sir. But I can't afford university now. Maybe someday." "Your parents?" "My father died last year. My stepmother, she doesn't support my education." He nodded slowly, and she saw something shift in his expression. Understanding, maybe. Sympathy, but not pity. "I'm sorry to hear that. It's not easy, losing a parent." "No, sir, it's not. But you still have hope. University someday." "Yes, sir." She said it firmly, wanting him to know she hadn't given up, that she wasn't just a cleaner with no ambition. "What would you study?" The question surprised her. No one had asked her that in so long. "Business administration, sir. Or maybe economics. I want to understand how things work, how to build something." "Smart choice." He smiled again. The world needs more people who want to build things instead of just tearing them down. Mercy finished cleaning and pushed her cart toward the door. She expected him to return to his work, to forget about her the moment she left. But he spoke again. "Mercy, can I ask you something else?" Yes, sir. Are you happy? The question stopped her cold. Happy. When was the last time anyone had asked her that? When was the last time she had even thought about happiness as something she was entitled to feel? I'm alive, sir, she said carefully. I have a job. That's more than many people have. That's not what I asked. She met his eyes then, really looked at him. He wasn't mocking her or testing her. He genuinely wanted to know. No, sir, she said quietly. I'm not happy. But I'm hopeful. And maybe that's enough for now. He nodded, satisfied with her honesty. Hope is important. Don't lose it. I won't, sir. As she left his office, Mercy felt something strange in her chest. It took her a moment to identify it. She felt seen. Not as a cleaner, not as a charity case, not as a burden. Just seen, as a whole person with dreams and thoughts and value. She didn't know his name, didn't know who he was beyond being some kind of executive. But that night, as she cleaned the rest of the floor, she found herself hoping she would run into him again. Not because she expected anything from him, but because talking to him made her remember who she used to be, who she still wanted to be. When her shift ended and she stepped out into the Lagos dawn, the city felt a little less hostile, the future a little less impossible. Small moments of human connection, she was learning, could be powerful things. They could remind you that you mattered, that your story wasn't over, that somewhere in this vast, indifferent city, someone might actually care whether you were happy or not. It was a small thing, maybe meaningless in the grand scheme of her struggles. But that morning, as Mercy walked to the bus stop with the rising sun painting the sky gold, she carried that conversation with her like a secret treasure, a reminder that kindness still existed in unexpected places. The books started appearing 2 weeks later. The first one Mercy noticed was Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, sitting on the edge of his desk where she couldn't miss it. The office was empty when she came to clean, but the book was there, almost like an invitation. She knew she shouldn't. Patience's warnings echoed in her mind. But her hand reached for it anyway, and before she knew it, she was reading the first chapter while sitting in his desk chair. Just a few pages, she told herself. Just enough to see if it was any good. It was. She lost herself in the story until her watch beeped, reminding her she had other offices to clean. She carefully replaced the book exactly where she had found it and went back to work. The next night, there was a bookmark placed 3 chapters in. The night after that, the bookmark had moved back to the first chapter, and there was a note on a post-it. If you're enjoying it, feel free to continue. D. She didn't even know his full name. But he knew she had been reading his book, and instead of being angry, he was encouraging her. Mercy stared at the note for a long moment before tucking it into her pocket. That night, she read 2 more chapters before forcing herself to stop. It became a ritual. Every few nights, when she cleaned his office, there would be a book waiting. Sometimes novels, sometimes biographies. Once a book about business strategy that was harder to read but fascinating. They never talked about the books directly when she encountered him working late, which happened more frequently now. Instead, they talked about other things. Do you like Lagos? He asked one night, startling her while she was dusting his bookshelf. It's all I know, sir. I was born here. Where in Lagos? Mushin, sir. But I live in Yoba now. Mushin, he repeated, and something in his voice suggested he understood what that meant. Not the sanitized, tourist-friendly Lagos, but the real Lagos, where people struggled and hustled and survived. It's a tough place. Everywhere is tough, sir, if you don't have money. He laughed at that, a genuine sound that surprised her. You're very wise for 18. Not wise, sir. Just experienced. Their conversations grew longer. He told her once about growing up in Anambra State, in a village so small it didn't appear on most maps. My mother sold vegetables in the market, he said. My father was a palm wine tapper. We had nothing. He said it matter-of-factly, without shame, and Mercy found herself relaxing around him. How did you end up here? She asked, gesturing to his expensive office. Scholarships, hard work, and luck, he said. Mostly luck. I got opportunities that many people smarter and harder working than me never got. That's why I try to help when I can. She wanted to ask more, wanted to know his story in detail, but she held back. There were boundaries, lines she couldn't cross. He was still her boss, even if he was kind. She was still just the cleaner. One night, he found her reading Half of a Yellow Sun, with tears streaming down her face. She had gotten to a particularly moving part and hadn't heard him come in. When she realized he was standing there, she quickly wiped her eyes and stood up. "I'm sorry, sir, I got carried away." "Don't apologize," he said softly. "That book made me cry too. The part about the train, right?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. He sat down in the chair across from his desk, the one visitors used, and for a moment they were just two people who had been moved by the same story. "You have a gift, Mercy," he said. "You feel things deeply. Don't lose that. The world tries to make us hard, especially people like us who've had to struggle. But empathy is a strength, not a weakness." "Sometimes it hurts too much," she whispered. "I know. But the alternative is worse. Trust me." These conversations sustained her. The job was still hard, the hours long, her living situation still precarious. But knowing that a few times a week she might talk to someone who saw her as a thinking, feeling person made it bearable. She remained guarded about her personal life. He would ask casual questions, how her day was, if she ate well, if she was safe where she lived. She answered vaguely, not wanting him to know she sometimes went to bed hungry, that her room was barely larger than a bathroom, that she was still essentially alone in the world. One night, about 2 months into this unusual friendship, he asked her something different. "What's your biggest fear, Mercy?" She thought about it while she mopped. "That I'll forget what I'm working toward. That one day I'll wake up and this will just be my life forever, and I won't even remember that I wanted something more." He was quiet for a long time. When she glanced at him, his expression was thoughtful, almost sad. "That won't happen," he said finally. "Not to someone who cries over books and asks questions about business strategy. You're going somewhere, Mercy. I'm sure of it." She wanted to believe him. But belief required hope, and hope required energy she didn't always have. Still, his words stayed with her, and on the hardest nights, when exhaustion made her want to quit everything, she remembered them. She still didn't know exactly who he was. The other cleaners called him Chief Daniel, and Patience had mentioned he was important, one of the big ones. But to Mercy, he was just D, the man who left her books and treated her like a human being. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The fever started on a Tuesday afternoon. Mercy woke up in her small room feeling like her head was splitting open. Her body ached and she was shivering despite the Lagos heat. She forced herself to get up, to eat the bread and tea she had bought the day before, but everything tasted like ash in her mouth. "Just tired," she told herself. "I'll feel better after I rest." But she didn't feel better. By Wednesday evening, when she was supposed to report for her shift, her temperature was so high she could barely think straight. She had to go to work. She couldn't afford to miss a day. 25,000 naira a month meant nothing if she lost the job. She dragged herself to the office building, her vision blurry, her clothes soaked with sweat. The security guard looked at her with concern. "Sister Mercy, you don't look well." "I'm fine," she lied, showing him her badge with shaking hands. She made it to the 20th floor before her legs gave out. One moment she was pushing her cleaning cart down the hallway. The next moment the floor was rushing up to meet her face. She heard someone shouting, felt hands grabbing her, but it all seemed to be happening very far away. When she opened her eyes, she was lying on a couch in an unfamiliar office. A woman in a white coat was taking her temperature, and Mr. Johnson, the facilities manager, was standing nearby looking worried. And there, in the corner of the office, was Chief Daniel, his face tight with concern. "How long has she been sick?" the woman asked. She was a doctor, Mercy realized hazily. The company doctor. "I don't know," Mr. Johnson said. She just collapsed in the hallway. Her temperature is 40 degrees. This isn't just a fever. She needs a hospital. No, Mercy tried to sit up, panic cutting through the fog. No hospital. I can't afford. Lie down, the doctor said firmly, pushing her back. You're in no condition to make decisions right now. What's her situation? Chief Daniel asked quietly. Does she have family to call? There was a pause. Mr. Johnson flipped through some papers. Her file just has her name and the address of a room in Yoba. No emergency contact, no family listed. No one. Chief Daniel's voice was sharp. No one, sir. Mercy heard them talking about her as if she wasn't there. The doctor was saying something about malaria and typhoid, about needing tests and treatment. Mr. Johnson was worrying about insurance and liability. And Chief Daniel was saying, with a tone that left no room for argument, take her to Lagoon Hospital. I'll handle the costs. Sir, that's not necessary, Mr. Johnson started. I said I'll handle it. Now get her an ambulance. The next few days were a blur of white walls, needles, and medicine that tasted bitter. Mercy drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes waking to find nurses checking her vitals, sometimes alone in the quiet hospital room. Once, she woke to find Chief Daniel sitting in the chair beside her bed, working on his laptop. How long have I been here? She croaked. He looked up, and the relief on his face was unmistakable. 3 days. You had us worried, Mercy. 3 days. Panic seized her. The rent, my room, I'll lose everything. It's taken care of, he said calmly. Focus on getting better. You don't understand. I can't afford to pay you back. I'm not asking you to. He moved his chair closer. Mercy, when we brought you here, we realized the full extent of your situation. You have no family, no real address. You were severely malnourished, and you'd been working yourself sick. His voice gentled. Why didn't you tell anyone how bad things were? She turned her face away, shame burning hotter than the fever had. What was I supposed to say? I'm just the cleaner. My problems aren't anyone else's responsibility. You're not just anything, he said firmly. You're a young woman who's been dealt a terrible hand and is doing everything she can to survive. There's no shame in that. The kindness in his voice broke something in her. She started crying, and once she started, she couldn't stop. All the fear, all the exhaustion, all the loneliness she had been carrying poured out in harsh sobs that hurt her chest. Chief Daniel didn't try to stop her or tell her it would be okay. He just handed her tissues and waited until she was empty. I'm sorry, she finally whispered. Don't be. He stood up. The doctor says you'll be here for another few days. After that, we need to talk about what happens next. But for now, just rest. Your only job is to get better. He left, and Mercy lay back against the pillows, feeling wrung out but somehow lighter. Someone knew. Someone cared. And for the first time in months, she wasn't facing her problems completely alone. When the doctor came in later for rounds, she confirmed what Chief Daniel had said. You had cerebral malaria and typhoid fever. A few more days and we might have been having a very different conversation. You're lucky someone got you here when they did. Lucky. Mercy thought about that word. Was it luck? Or was it something else, something she didn't have a name for yet? All she knew was that the man who left her books and asked about her dreams had literally saved her life. And somehow, impossibly, that changed everything. Chief Daniel came every day. Sometimes just for a few minutes between meetings, sometimes for an hour in the evening. They talked more openly now, the crisis having torn down the careful walls between them. On the 5th day, when Mercy was finally feeling human again, he brought her a folder. I need to be honest with you about who I am, he said, sitting down in the visitor's chair. My full name is Chief Daniel Obioma. I own Obioma Industries, a manufacturing and investment company. I'm also a philanthropist, and I run a foundation that focuses on education and youth empowerment. Mercy stared at him. She had known he was important, but this? Your Chief Daniel Obioma? The billionaire. He smiled wryly. The media likes that word. I prefer to think of myself as someone who got lucky and is trying to do some good with it. But why? She struggled to understand. Why were you working late in that office? Why were you talking to me? That's my office, he said simply. I keep strange hours. As for why I talked to you, you seemed interesting. You read books, you think deeply, you work hard. Those are qualities I respect. He paused. And maybe I saw something of myself in you. When I was your age, I was selling oranges on the streets of Onitsha, dreaming of something bigger. You sold oranges? She couldn't picture this wealthy, educated man hawking fruit in traffic. Every day for 3 years. Until a missionary teacher saw me reading a newspaper in English and offered to sponsor my education. One person, one moment of kindness, changed my entire life. He leaned forward. Mercy, I've been thinking about your situation a lot. And I want to help, but I need to know what you want. Not what you think I want to hear, what you actually want for your life. She didn't have to think about it. The answer had been burning in her heart for months. I want to go to university. I want to study, to learn, to build something with my life. I don't want to be cleaning floors when I'm 40, not because there's anything wrong with cleaning, but because I know I'm capable of more. She took a breath. But I don't want charity. I don't want to be someone's project. I want to earn it. He nodded, as if she had passed some kind of test. Good. Because what I'm about to offer isn't charity, it's an opportunity. But it comes with expectations. He opened the folder and handed her some papers. My foundation runs a scholarship program for disadvantaged youth. It covers university tuition, accommodation, and a small stipend. In exchange, scholars work part-time at the foundation office, helping with youth programs, mentoring others, and maintaining good grades. It's not easy. We expect excellence. Mercy's hands trembled as she looked at the papers. Why me? Because you remind me that potential exists in unexpected places. Because you saved a man from a burning car without thinking about reward. Because you cry over books and hold on to your WAEC certificate like it's gold. Because you deserve a chance. He paused. I looked into your secondary school results, by the way. 6 distinctions and 2 credits. You're brilliant, Mercy. You just need an opportunity to show it. The man from the accident, she said slowly. On Lekki Ape Expressway, about 3 months ago. That was you. He smiled. I didn't know it was you who pulled me out until after you collapsed at work. One of my security team had gotten your description from witnesses, but I never found you. Imagine my surprise when I realized the cleaner who read my books was the same person who saved my life. Mercy put her hand over her mouth. The threads of her life, seemingly random and chaotic, were connecting in ways she could never have imagined. I ran away, she whispered. I was scared of the police. I know. But you still did the right thing when it mattered. That says everything about who you are. He stood up. Think about my offer. Take your time. But Mercy, understand this. I'm not doing this because I feel sorry for you. I'm doing this because I believe in you. There's a difference. After he left, Mercy read the scholarship papers 3 times. The conditions were clear. Maintain a minimum GPA of 3.5, work 15 hours a week at the foundation, participate in community service, and mentor younger scholars. It wasn't a handout. It was an opportunity, but one she would have to earn every single day. That night, staring at the hospital ceiling, Mercy thought about her father. He had died believing his daughter would amount to something, that his sacrifices hadn't been in vain. Her stepmother had tried to crush that belief. The streets had tried to beat it out of her. Poverty had tried to strangle it. But somehow, against all odds, here she was, being offered a chance to make her father's faith in her come true. She thought about Chief Daniel's story, about selling oranges in Onitsha, about one teacher who changed everything. She thought about how he still worked late hours, still treated cleaners with respect, still read books and cried over them. Success hadn't made him forget where he came from. "If I take this," she whispered to the darkness, "I'll make it count. I'll work harder than anyone. I'll prove that kindness isn't wasted, that belief in people isn't naive. I'll become someone who lifts others up the way you're lifting me up." It wasn't a prayer exactly, more like a promise to herself, to her father's memory, to Chief Daniel, to all the people who had suffered like her and never gotten a chance. If she succeeded, it wouldn't just be for her. It would be for all of them. The next morning, when Chief Daniel came by on his way to a meeting, Mercy was sitting up in bed, the papers signed and ready. "I accept," she said. "And thank you doesn't feel like enough, but thank you." He took the papers with a smile that reached his eyes. "Don't thank me yet. Wait until you're struggling with assignments at 2 in the morning and wondering if you made the right choice." "I won't regret it," she said with certainty. "Whatever happens, I won't regret trying. That's the spirit." He paused at the door. "Welcome to the Obioma Foundation Scholars Program, Mercy. Your life starts now." The University of Lagos campus stretched out before Mercy like a promised land. Students streamed past her, carrying books and laptops, laughing and talking about classes and exams. She stood at the entrance, wearing new clothes bought with her scholarship stipend, clutching her acceptance letter and trying to believe this was real. "Are you lost?" A girl about her age stopped beside her, smiling. "You look like a first-year student." "I am," Mercy said. "Business administration." "Same. I'm Victoria. Come on, orientation is starting in 20 minutes. As they walked together across the campus, Victoria chatting about her excitement and nervousness, Mercy felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. The orientation hall was packed with new students, all buzzing with energy and hope. Mercy found a seat and looked around at faces that reflected her own anticipation. These were her peers now. She belonged here. When she pulled out her WAEC certificate to register, she remembered the night Patricia had thrown her out, how she had clutched this certificate like a lifeline. Her father's last gift, her proof of worth, her ticket to a future. And now, finally, it was taking her somewhere. The foundation had arranged accommodation for her in a decent students' hostel, shared with 3 other foundation scholars. Her work at the foundation office started the following week. 15 hours of helping coordinate youth programs, mentoring secondary school students from disadvantaged backgrounds, and learning about non-profit management. It was more than she could have dreamed of. But dreams came with challenges. The classwork was harder than she expected. While some students had attended prestigious private schools with computers and laboratories, Mercy was catching up on gaps in her education. She stayed up late studying, asking questions, refusing to fall behind. The other scholars became her support system, all of them fighting their way to something better. Chief Daniel remained involved but kept his distance, letting her find her own way. Once a month, all the scholars had lunch with him and the foundation staff. He would ask about their progress, their challenges, their dreams. He never made them feel like charity cases. Instead, he treated them like investments, like people worth believing in. "How are you adjusting?" he asked Mercy at their first lunch. "It's hard," she admitted. "But hard in a good way. I'm learning so much, and not just from textbooks." "What else are you learning?" "That poverty doesn't mean you're broken. That there are people who genuinely want to help, not to feel good about themselves, but because they understand what it's like. That one chance really can change everything." He nodded, pleased. "And what will you do with your chance?" "I'll make sure other people get one too." 6 months into her first year, Mercy started a small initiative through the foundation. She went back to the streets where she used to hawk, to the uncompleted buildings where homeless girls slept, and she talked to them about education, about opportunities, about the scholarship program. She helped 3 girls get into the program, girls who reminded her of herself, scared and hungry but unbroken. Blessing, her old street friend, was one of them. When Mercy found her still hawking oranges in Acacia, she almost cried. "You made it," Blessing said, looking at Mercy in her student clothes with something like awe. "We can both make it," Mercy replied, "if you're willing to try." Now Blessing was studying hotel management, and at night, the two of them would study together, marveling at how far they had come from sleeping on concrete floors. On the last day of her first year, Mercy stood on campus watching the sunset paint the sky gold and orange. She thought about Patricia, wondered if her stepmother ever thought about the girl she had thrown away. She thought about her father and hoped he was proud. She thought about all the nights sleeping on church benches and in uncompleted buildings, all the times she had been invisible to people who looked right through her. But most of all, she thought about the moment everything changed. Not just the accident, not just meeting Chief Daniel, but the moment she decided not to give up. The moment she held on to her WAEC certificate and believed it meant something. The moment she saved a stranger without thought of reward. All those small moments had led here, to this sunset, to this new life. Her phone buzzed. A text from Chief Daniel. "Heard you made first-class grades. Proud of you. Keep going." She smiled and typed back, "Thank you for everything. I won't let you down." His response came immediately. "You couldn't if you tried. You're exactly who I believed you were." Mercy put her phone away and started walking toward her hostel. Tomorrow she would visit some secondary schools to talk about the scholarship program. Next week she would start her summer internship at a finance company, another opportunity arranged through the foundation. Her life was full now, busy and challenging and full of purpose. She wasn't the poor orphan thrown out by her wicked stepmother anymore. She was Mercy, university student, foundation scholar, mentor, survivor, fighter. She was someone who had been given a chance and was determined to multiply it, to pass it on, to prove that kindness rippled outward in ways no one could predict. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And Mercy, walking through the University of Lagos campus as the sun set over the city that had tried to break her, knew that the best chapters were still ahead. She had survived. She had found help when she needed it most. And now, she would spend the rest of her life being that help for someone else. That was the real transformation, she realized. Not from poor to comfortable, from nothing to something. But from someone who received kindness to someone who gave it. From someone who needed lifting up to someone who could reach down and pull others up. That was the change Chief Daniel had really given her. Not just an education or a room or a future, but the understanding that we rise by lifting others. And Mercy intended to spend the rest of her life rising. Did Mercy's journey inspire you? Do you believe that one act of kindness can truly change a life? If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Folktales by Inaya for more inspiring stories that remind us of the power of compassion, resilience, and hope. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that might just change how you see the world. Remember, your story isn't over yet, and sometimes, the best chapters come after the hardest ones. See you in the next story.